500 high bank side-by-side open wheel miles ahead as we are ready for the 20th running of the Michigan 500. Michael Andretti is looking for his second kart championship. And after scoring his 40th career win last Sunday on the streets of Toronto, he may very well be on his way.
There's no driver in this field that has more 500-mile experience of Michigan than Michael Andretti. Today marks his 17th marathon start at this track, and twice in the past he's wheeled into victory lane. But it's been 11 years since he stood at the top of the podium here at Michigan. Fresh off that victory in Toronto in the streets just a week ago, he's now within 2 points of Roberto Moreno as he bids for a championship. And not been for a last-second qualifying run by Paul Tracy that broke the track record and beat Michael by only 0.04 of a second. Andretti would have had one more precious championship point and cut that deficit to Moreno in half. Clearly, it's the drive for another championship that fuels the desires of Michael Andretti.
Talking 500 miles, there's only one driver in the field today who has won a race at a 500-mile distance in the year 2000. Of course, that would be Juan Montoya. And that win, of course, came at the Indianapolis 500, where he won at his very first attempt. He said this race today will be different. It'll all be about drafting. He thinks it suits his style perfectly. He's ready for a wild ride today.
Of Michigan always produces great racing. As a matter of fact, of the 24 who will start here today, 3 have actually won this race. 12 have led laps in this race, but 8 have never taken the green flag. As far as lead changes, they are constant and often, and close finishes are commonplace. Parker?
The track is nearly 75 feet wide and the corners banked 18 degrees. It allows the drivers to go low, middle, or high. We've seen cars 3, even 4 abreast. And with the draft, these guys are approaching speeds in excess of 250 miles an hour. It makes for some of the best racing of the year. We've had 8 different winners in 10 races. Today could produce a 9th different winner.
We move closer and closer to the start of this race now. So let's take a look at how they qualified for the 20th running of the Michigan 500. Paul Tracy, this year's Long Beach winner, has never won a 500-mile race, but he'll start on the pole with a new track record. And Michael Andretti will start on the outside of the front row. In row 2, it's Michael's teammate, Christian Fittipaldi. And on the outside is row 3 is Jill DeFer and Jimmy Vasser to the outside. Vasser's last win came in the 500 at California in 1998. In the 4th row, Juan Montoya and Alex Tagliani. Back in the 5th row, Patrick Carpentier and Kenny Breck. Breck is a kart rookie, but this is the 1999 Indianapolis 500-mile race champion. Max Pappas suffered a heartbreak last season running out of fuel with less than a mile to go here at Michigan. Max starts on the inside of row 6 and Adrian Fernandez to the outside. Fernandez won kart's last 500-miler in the 99 season finale at Fontana. Row 7, Elio Castroneves and Cristiano D'Amata. In the 8th row, Oriol Servia and Roberto Moreno. Moreno has 1 win, 1 pole, and 4 podiums this year. Moreno also has the points lead. In row 9, Mark Blundell and Tony Kanaan is on the outside of the row. After a 4-race absence due to injury, Kanaan is back to defend his Michigan 500 victory. In row 10, it's Shinji Nakano and Mauricio Gugelmin. Back in row number 11, Mimo Gidley replacing Norberto Fontana and Michel Jourdain Jr. Luis Garcia Jr. is on the inside of 12 and Tarso Marquez on the outside. We will be back with the green flag and the start of the 20th Michigan 500 right after this. 8 different winners this year. Will we see a brand new winner once again at Michigan? At Michigan Speedway, 24 cars of the Kart FedEx Championship Series are ready to take the green flag for 250 laps, 500 miles. For the starting grid, Paul Tracy, with a new lap record, took the pole in a very tight battle with Michael Andretti and with Christian Fittipaldi. Tracy's teammate, Dario Franchitti, will start on the outside of row 2. We'll show you the entire starting grid here in a race that always favors the strongest of the engines. The field moving now, ready to begin to form up for the pace lap. 2 miles around this track here. We said 250 laps. Fuel range absolutely critical. It's a race of horsepower and great strategy. And in 500 miles, anything and almost everything can go wrong. So you have to be on the top of your game.
We'll see the lead change a number of times as this race progresses, not just at the stripe, but all the way around the track. I talked to Michael Andretti, Paul Tracy, Dario Franchitti yesterday. They think laying back in the beginning is the way to go. We'll see if they've got the patience to do that. I think there's a lot at stake to lead the opening of this race for bragging rights going through the rest of the season.
The racetrack is wide open. The high banks make for some great side-by-side racing, but don't forget, when you're talking an open-wheel car, you can't risk even the slightest touch of your wheels with someone else's.
The guys in front have the advantage. They're running in clean air. For the rookies here, like Tagliani, Oriol Servia, who's been here in Indy Lights, but he's never experienced the turbulence at 240 miles an hour. The methanol burning your eyes. It's going to be quite a wild ride for the opening of this race.
Just like you did in 95, Parker Johnstone, Paul Tracy is bringing the field toward the green flag. Christian Fittipaldi closes up nice and tight on Paul Tracy. We wait in. Here we go. The 500 miles is underway, and already they go 5 wide.
Joe DeFerrin almost making contact with Christian Fittipaldi, and DeFerrin takes the lead going into the first corner.
DeFerrin comes screaming forward, while at the same time, everybody looks for racing room. Franchitti comes down low. Montoya comes up to the front. Michael slots into second. And DeFerrin drops back to third. They come 3 wide.
It shows you how quickly things can change here. Montoya started 7th, and he leads the opening lap.
It's close as they come across the line. Montoya, Andretti, then DeFerrin. Franchitti in 4th, Paul Tracy, and Kenny Brack is now up to 6th place. On the long, wide backstretch.
And as I said, last night, both Michael and Juan told me they were going to lay back, get 6th gear, lean the mixture out, and just be patient. Well, we see how long that strategy lasted.
That was a great idea right up until the green. They come side by side for the line. Montoya noses ahead of Michael Andretti. Montoya leads it again. Michael Andretti drops back, looking at Montoya.
Opening laps of 224 miles an hour.
DeFerrin sits 3rd. Kenny Brack moved 2 more spots and is up in 4th place now. Unofficially, thus far we've had 6 different lead changes. Here comes Michael trying it again on Montoya. Michael high, he's got a good run on him. Michael grabs the lead. Oh, Montoya comes way high off of 2. Ducks in behind Michael, tries to get a run on him going into 3. Montoya's got Michael. The lead changes again.
That's the beauty of Michigan. You can run low, middle, or high. It gives the drivers the opportunity to take advantage of the draft produced by the Hanford device, make the pass and not get shut off going into the corners, and Michael goes right back around.
Michael grabs that lead again. 5 laps complete. This time, it looks like Michael may be able to hold it a little bit longer.
But watch Montoya's slingshot. Top speeds increase 10, almost 15 miles an hour. goes to the high side going into the third corner.
So much for that idea as Montoya takes the lead back from Michael Andretti. Michael trying to make his move. A little further back, Kenny Breck is working hard on DeFerrin. Carpentier, Franchitti, Castroneves, and Christian Fittipaldi all run together. Fifth down through eighth. There they come onto the screen. Carpentier with Castroneves making his move to the inside. And Castroneves comes forward. Kenny Breck finally gets DeFerrin and moves to third place. And now starts his pursuit of second place Michael Andretti, who's trying for the lead.
It really doesn't make any difference where you run here. These cars are full throttle all the way around. They simply are looking for balance, a car that works well in traffic. You've seen guys now run all the way around the bottom. Conversely, other guys are running around the top. And look at Montoya now, picks up the draft, trying to slingshot around the outside, going into turn 3, and he does it.
Back and forth they go. Montoya and Michael hammer at one another. 7 laps complete after a nice smooth start. But when they got down into turn 1 on that start, boy, it was anybody's game. Breck back battling with DeFerrin. DeFerrin takes him back.
The speeds have now stabilized in the 224-mile-per-hour range. And it's at this point in the race that their crew chiefs are getting on the radio saying, okay, guys, come on, we've got a long race here. Watch the revs, watch the temperatures.
Just record the last 5 laps and play them back in turn 3 because Montoya and Andretti continue at it. So do DeFerrin and Kenny Breck. Michael goes high on Montoya.
You're right. Clear.
Well, listening to the spotters, you're telling the drivers who they've got behind them or on the high or low side. When you hear they're clear, that means the driver doesn't have to look in the mirror like Kenny Breck is there looking for Christian Fittipaldi.
Christian Fittipaldi tries to go inside of Breck. Elio Castroneves is looking to the high side. Fittipaldi has Breck. Breck comes back at him. They both may end up getting DeFerrin before this one's over. Gil DeFerrin, his 100th career start. 6 right now in third place.
In this draft, keep in mind the drivers are approaching speeds of 250 miles an hour down the backs and front straights through the tri-oval, going at 370 feet per second. If they make a decision a tenth of a second too late, they'll move 37 feet up into the wall. They've got to use those spotters as an extra pair of eyes when you're constantly surrounded by traffic, because the mental concentration necessary to get through 500 miles is absolutely intense.
You've seen most of these come forward. Montoya, Breck, Castroneves, Cristiano D'Amato with a good move as well. Montoya is coming back at Michael Andretti. Thus far, we have had 22 unofficial lead changes in the first few laps of the Michigan 500. Last check, it was Michael, Juan, Gil DeFerrin, Breck, and Christian. Ford, Toyota, Honda. You think you've seen some good drives today? We're going to show you some driving. We're at Michigan Speedway for the 20th running of the Michigan 500. It started just a few moments ago. 16 laps complete. I'm Paul Page with Parker Johnstone, Jan Beekes, and Gary Gerald are in the pits in these 16 laps around the course. So unofficial counts, there have been 32 lead changes already, though it's been pretty stable at the line. There are the current standings. Juan Montoya is officially in the lead of the race, but he battles with Michael Andretti, who just got past him. But lap after lap, Montoya has been able to get back around Michael at the line. Michael was scored as the leader of lap number 17. We're on the 18th lap now.
All the way through the field, the action has been fast and furious. You can see Christian Fittipaldi trying to move up behind Kenny Breck there. These guys in this draft are approaching speeds of 250 miles an hour down this back straightaway. Watch how they use the draft to their advantage. There goes Michael Andretti on the high side of Juan Montoya. We're seeing these changes all the way back through the pack.
Montoya, this year's Indianapolis 500 champion, just behind him, last year's Indy 500 champion, Kenny Breck. Montoya goes to the inside of Michael Andretti. And once again, Montoya grabs the lead back. Kenny Breck now looks at an opportunity to go down low on Michael Andretti. Gil DeFerrin moves in on the high side. Helio Castroneves is there. Helio Castroneves now sits in fourth, not DeFerrin. And Christian Fittipaldi's behind him. Paul Tracy broke the track record and started on the pole. He is now 14th in just 18 laps. There's Tracy. But Parker Johnstone, the trick here is to keep the car alive for 500 miles.
7.9. Is car okay?
That's Paul's engineer.
I got a big Porsche 3-4.
Paul Tracy talking to his engineer, Tony Sekeli. They're already getting ready for the first round of pit stops. We won't see that for another 15 to 18 laps, but they want to know what sort of changes they're going to make. But as you said, the strategy of the past was to get the car perfectly balanced over 450 miles to sprint that last 50. I talked to Michael Andretti, Dario Franchitti, Juan Montoya, and Paul Tracy last night. They said, we're going to put it up in 6th gear. We're going to lean the fuel back and cruise to make sure we've got a good car underneath us. Well, guess what? As you said earlier, as soon as that green flag came out, that strategy went out the window, and all we're seeing is flat-out sprinting. Now is Kenny Breck looking underneath Helio Castroneves.
Helio Castroneves high, Kenny Breck low. The leader, Montoya, left side of the screen. Breck can't get Castroneves there. Michael Andretti has fallen back to 6th just in the last 2 laps. Cristiano D'Amata has moved up. Now 5th. Montoya, Castroneves, Breck, 1, 2, 3. Take a look at the start of this race just a few moments ago. Look at Montoya. They went 5 wide on the start. Montoya low. DeFerrin moved early. And then as the momentum came up for Montoya on the backstretch, Montoya and Michael running for the line. Montoya led the first lap and thereafter for some time at the line. But as we said, constant lead changing all around the track. Unfortunately, they only score him right at the line. Back to live coverage. Helio Castroneves has just taken the lead away from Montoya. Kenny Breck is 3rd, Fittipaldi 4th. Montoya sits back in 2nd. He's been battling hard with everybody, Jan Bikas.
Yes, he has, Paul, and he has a disadvantage right from the start. He cannot communicate with the pits. They found this out when they strapped him in the car a few moments ago, and they realized that the radio would not transmit from Montoya to the pits, although he can hear the pits. And as you know, in a 500-mile race, one of the tricks is to say what your car is doing and adjust it at each pit stop. He will not be able to do so.
It's a huge problem for the driver, as Jan said. As they get prepared to come into the pits, the driver will be telling them if he wants a wing change, if he wants a tire pressure or stagger change in the tires. He can't do that. They still have a pit board, but if they've got the radio communications, that's only a backup device for the crew to communicate to the driver. Juan Montoya is going to have to do all the gesturing, all the talking once the car comes to a complete stop in the pit box sometime in the next 10 to 13 laps.
Already the front of the field has begun to encounter some of the slower cars. Luis Garcia Jr. that the leaders just went around. Castroneves, Montoya, 1-2. Cristiano D'Amata is sitting 4th now. We mentioned him a moment ago as he ran down the backstretch. He came off of a very good showing a week ago at Toronto where he led in the early going. He's fully capable of winning here today. The leaders work around Shinji Nakano.
You heard one of the spotters' voices saying clear. They're an extra set of eyes for the drivers, letting them know if there's anyone behind, above, or below them.
We like that gear. We like that gear. We like the mileage. Looking good.
Here's a surprise. That's Roberto Moreno that the leaders just overhauled. Moreno, the points leader, by 2 points over Michael Andretti coming into this race. Jan Bikas.
In regards to Roberto Moreno, his car has gone loose. That's why he's dropping back. So he does have radio communications. He's called the pits, but once you lose a lap, you're in big trouble.
His teammate Adrian Fernandez currently runs in 8th place, just behind Max Pappas, who almost won this race 1 year ago, led most of the laps by far, and only lost in the last mile. Twice that has happened. The Michigan 500, the leader, as they were going to the last mile of the race, ended up at least in 2nd, if not further back. Fittipaldi looks for Kenny Breck. Montoya still trying to work. Helio Castroneves, who was forced to qualify in his backup car. He had a mechanical problem on the first lap of his qualifying. They pulled off. He had to go back, grab his backup car, and wait for the end of qualifying, and then put the backup car into the field. Jimmy Vasser is 12th. Beginning the 31st lap of the Michigan 500 after 29. Here was the running order: Honda, Toyota, and then 2 Fords.
The Michigan 500 on ABC Sports, brought to you by FedEx, proud sponsor of the FedEx Championship Series, and Firestone, America's tire since 1900.
Welcome back to the Michigan 500. Juan Montoya headed in, made a 11.9-second pit stop, is back in the race. Here comes Helio Castroneves, who was battling with him at the time. Gary?
He must feel like he's been crawling down pit road at 50 miles per hour. He's in the last pit, the first of probably 6 stops on this day. If all goes routine, Rick Reineman holding his driver at the front. The revs come up, fueling's complete. He's gone. It's Dr. Castroneves as the rest of the field streaks through. He's a little bit earlier than some of the other contenders. Let's go to Jan.
And Kenny Breck comes in for his first service of the day. They're expecting 6 pit stops today. The only thing they're changing at the moment is a slight change in tire pressure. You see nothing happens with the wings. Waiting for the fuel. 11.1 seconds, that's pretty darn good for the early stop of the day. But remember, there's more fuel in the tank. It flows faster at the beginning of the race than at the end.
Well, the leader, who is Christian Fittipaldi at this moment, has carried his car 37 laps as Dario Franchitti makes his stop. And where they're making this first stop, since we've been green flag all the way, Parker, is going to tell us a great deal about what they are capable of doing toward the end of the race.
What they're trying to do is pick up track position in case there's a yellow flag. What they want to be able to do.
Blend line on your way out.
What they want to be able to do, of course, is to be able to pit in the yellow. If you can pick up a lap or 2 here over the course of 6, 7, or 8 stops, that's 16 plus laps to your advantage. If you get yellow at the right time.
Watch your speed, Mike. Look for Timmy down here.
Michael Andretti makes his stop. His teammate Christian Fittipaldi is still on course. Gary?
4 tires and fuel. Hit your marks, Mike.
There's the command from Kenny, and Mike hits the marks. They got
downforce.
They got a couple of more laps than most of the other top contenders. Helmet cam up there in the right front. And boy, with a lot of smoke off those rear wheels, Michael is gone. Now they await in the adjacent pit Christian Fittipaldi, his teammate. And Christian able to get another lap out on this first fuel load.
Hit your marks.
Methodically, the Newman Haas team goes to work. They'll be tested numerous times today. That's one of the beauties of a 500-mile race.
Go, go, go.
A little bit slow racing. He's right in front of Jimmy Vasser. Oh, it's close as they go down side by side.
Yeah, but
Vasser may have missed his pit.
he did, Gary. Jimmy Vasser pulled up, almost tried to parallel park in the pits, and then decided he had to go around. We remain under green flag racing. Adrian Fernandez is the current leader. Here's Jimmy Vasser.
But watch the car leaving right there. Jimmy can't get into the box. As Roberto Moreno comes out, Jimmy stands on it rather than trying to have the crew pull him back in.
Here's Adrian Fernandez. Comes into the Patrick pits, makes his stop, and does so on the 39th lap. When they have to slow for the pits, it's nearly... What's the problem down there with Fernandez? Just a loop coming off of the end.
As he let go of the pit speed limiter on the way out, he spun the rear tires. and the car snapped around. We'll take another look at it here.
The yellow comes out, though the car itself is just beyond the blend line at the entrance to the pits. Works pretty good for Jimmy Vasser, who is finally able to get his stop done and does so on the 40th lap. Kart safety team rolls up to assist Adrian Fernandez. Fernandez, as the leader of the race, came into the pits, and here it is, Parker.
Now watch as he gets to the last pit. He comes off the pit speed limit, stands on the throttle. The car makes a left-hand turn, just brushes the nose along the wall.
The start of that turn, and where was he going?
Well, here's the problem. You've got over 900 horsepower on cold tires. The right rear tire is a little larger than the left side tire. And with the lock differential, when you spin the tire, it just snaps it around. You can see the damage to the front.
There is the leader of the Michigan 500 with 40 laps complete. Kenny Breck. The two Indy 500 champions for the past year are running 1 and 2. Standing on it at the Michigan 500. Kenny Breck, under yellow, is the leader of the race. Adrian Fernandez came back in hoping for a new nose on the car and a couple of tires. Kenny Breck is the leader, but this year's Indy 500 champion sitting right behind him, Juan Montoya. Helio Castroneves is third. Christian Fittipaldi is fourth. That's the way they'll be when they come back to green, with all of the field now completing their first stops. Jan Bikas?
Paul, while we were at commercial, Adrian Fernandez came onto pit road and they changed 4 tires, but they did not change the nose. And it is in fact smashed back about to this portion, and it's just flat here. And John Ward, his engineer, said, we don't care if this is missing because back here the wings are fine. This is what produces the aerodynamic downforce. But I was surprised. I thought with that punched off nose, you'd have all kinds of drag, aerodynamic drag at the front of the car. They decided, we're not going to change it.
That's fascinating. Spent all those hours in the wind tunnel. I guess that's something you know. There is Fernandez, who, with all of his problems, has dropped well back in the field. This was the view from his camera as he headed out of the pits.
Leaves the pit, shifts up. Now watch his hand here as he comes off the button. Hits it, stands on the throttle, lights up the rear tires, makes a left-hand turn, punches the nose into the wall. And certainly that aerodynamic problem with the front of the car that Jan was talking about can't be beneficial here, where speeds can reach up to 250 miles an hour.
The rookie Kenny Breck will bring the field back to the green flag. Now, don't forget, after our coverage here, we'll go back to some driving. It's been a historic day at the British Open presented by MasterCard, and ABC Sports will take you back to St. Andrews for the concluding coverage of the British Open presented by MasterCard. So under the caution for Adrian Fernandez, got a glimpse from Mark Blundell's point of view. Blundell does pretty well in these long distance races. Unfortunately, last year, Mark Blundell was not here. He was injured in a testing accident over at Gateway at St. Louis. Now, this is Memo
You get close
Gedley.
to the guy in front of you, it'll help you a little bit with taps.
The voice is John Della Pena, the owner of this car. Normally, Norberto Fontana would be in here, but he's had
He's going to go green next time.
very little opportunity to test on ovals, and so they made the decision last Monday to put Memo in the car. He's become the new super sub of the year. The top Penske car is now Helio Castroneves. He's been at the front. He's now third. Gary Gerald?
Yeah, indeed. And Paul, you know, you're talking about all this wild action early and how everybody was saying last night and this morning how they were going to take it easy, get in the cruise mode. That has not happened. Well, Roger Penske was on the radio during the yellow to Gilles DeFerrin saying, we don't need to be racing the way these guys are. It's way too early. DeFerrin came back and said the guys on the track have made him nearly crash 2 or 3 times by chopping his air off. Then a few moments later, DeFerrin was apologizing because he inadvertently chopped off Mauricio Guzman. And so Penske has set Pete Twitty, one of their emissaries, down to the Guzman Pac West camp to offer the apology. They don't want any retaliatory moves later in the afternoon.
You can see there that Ray Hall's team, the Ray Hall Letterman team of Kenny Brack, moved him from third to first, did in the pits what Kenny had not yet accomplished on the track. Green flag comes out again on board the nose of Max Pappas. It's a good run down the inside. He's going to get caught up behind Gidley as he comes off there. Christian Fittipaldi comes just inside of Max Pappas. It's a battle for fourth. Now you're on board with Cristiano D'Amata. He's back behind Fittipaldi. And Christian still trying to work maps. Kenny Brack still the leader. Montoya still second.
You know, we get immune to the speed after a while because the long shots slow the cars down a little bit, but look at the fence go by. Traveling at 370 feet a second down these long straightaways. Look up to the right side of your screen. It gives you an idea of the kind of velocity these guys are carrying around this track.
Max Pappas reaching down. He's done it twice on his steering wheel, the right side of the steering wheel, to make an adjustment.
Yeah, they're adjusting the fuel mapping there on the starts and restarts. They obviously go to full rich. They want full power to try to get a break from the competitors around them. As soon as they start to settle down.
Double slingshot. Helio Castro Neves moves, then Christian moves. Christian comes up behind Montoya, fights for second. May have actually gotten second at the line. He did. Now he moves on the leader. But he really cannot yet contest Kenny Brack. Pappas comes to the inside of Castroneves. Grabs fourth.
And now look at Christian in the draft. Top speed increases up to 10, sometimes 15 miles an hour. Montoya now looking on the high side, but didn't get a good enough run on Kenny Brack.
So at the start of the 51st lap, Christian Fittipaldi has his moment in the sunshine, taking the lead at the Michigan 500.
Watch the relative position of the cars as they go through these corners. Gary Gerald mentioned that Penske had sent an emissary down to the Guzman team because the cars don't have to touch in order to crash. The driver, the leading driver, simply has to cross in front of the trailing driver, disturbing the air over his car, taking away aerodynamic downforce. They can be 8-10 car lengths in front, cut up across the track, remove the air from that trailing driver, and create an accident. Back on board with Max Pappas. Paul, I started to mention some of the things we'll see them adjust. The fuel mapping. You'll see the weight jacker being adjusted. Also, you'll see them use the push-to-talk button to talk to their teams. Also, the anti-roll bars. They can adjust the front and rear anti-roll bars. So there's also boost control. So there are a lot of things that the drivers are doing while they're steering these cars around at up to 4 Gs around the high banks.
Now Max Pappas trying to get down inside of his teammate Kenny Brack. As back and forth, this battle within the top 10 continues to run. Christian Fittipaldi is still at the front, Gary Gerald.
Yeah, and the radio from the team is telling him they don't want him to lead so much. And apparently, we don't know. We can only assume it's because of the fuel conservation mode. If you're out there punching a hole through the air first, you're obviously going to use more fuel, more horsepower. If you get back in the draft, you can just kind of feather that throttle along. And I'm sure Parker can relate to that with all the laps that he's run at speed at this place over the years.
Montoya's led the most laps to this point, but it's still a pretty good fight. 5 different guys have been in front.
And Gary, that's exactly right. It not only conserves fuel, but it helps take some of the stress off the engine. These cars turn 15,500 plus during the course of the race. They try to breathe the throttles as often as possible, try to get the oil and water temp stabilized, try to give the engine some breathing room. But the fuel conservation is probably the
number one idea. We saw differences between that first stop of up to 6 laps. You multiply that over 6, 7, 8 stops. That's a difference of over 50 laps towards the end. You could save a stop and win the race just because everybody else has to pit.
Here is the defending champion, Tony Kanaan, who is back in the car after a 4-race absence and driving with a cast on his left arm. Jan Bikas.
Yes, and they're meeting on the right side pod. It appeared as though one of the aerodynamic devices on the right side pod came loose. They ripped it free. As long as he was here, they topped it off with fuel, but not the way the defending champion wanted this day to go so far.
And the problem they had is that they were having high water temps, and I think that that vortex generator, the aerodynamic device, was laying across the top of the exit, not allowing full airflow through that radiator. They wanted to get that corrected. Great job by Tony Kanaan. It's only been 37 days since he's had surgery for the multiple fracture of his left arm.
Yeah, but if Adrian Fernandez's engineer, John Ward, didn't care about that big blunt nose, why would they care about that on the side?
Well, when the water temp pegs and overheats the engine, you have to stop.
So the lead changes lap after lap after lap. Look down from the Honda Helicam. 57 laps of the 250 scheduled here. It's 2.2 seconds from first back to ninth. Fully a third of the field. Well, the Michigan 500 settles down, but only just a bit. All of the drivers say the real trick here is to get to the 500th mile, but they're battling all the way thus far. Back at the Michigan 500, we use our first Toyota Spotlight to show you the action while you have been away. Kenny Breck was the leader when we left you. And then Michael Andretti moved on Kenny. That sent him back to fourth and put him in a battle with Juan Montoya. And Elio Castroneves was able to come up and do battle, take the lead for a lap, and then Michael Andretti went back to the front of the field, and this is the battle behind Andretti. Michigan 500 thus far has had 50 unofficial lead changes. That means lead changes all around the track. Officially, they only count them at the start-finish line. Michael Andretti is now the leader. Juan Montoya was up sitting there in second place with Elio Castroneves working on him. And the other Indy 500 champion that's in this field, the champion from a year ago, Kenny Breck, is in there in fourth place as Castroneves moves around Montoya, the defending champion of this race, who drove through pain with a cast on his arm trying to get back in this race, appears to be the first one out. Jan Bikas?
Yes, what a change of fate. You win last year, and now you're the first out. What happened, Tony?
Well, we had some temperature problems, and you know, the water temp started to get too high, and we didn't want to risk anything. You know, we were just could make a lot more mass, and I could hurt myself and hurt the car, and it's great to be back. I was having a lot of fun. The car was really good. And I would like to say thanks to Dr. Ovi and Trammell, who took care and put me back in the car that quick, and guys, we're back. Unfortunately, it wasn't in the way that I wished last night, and I had a dream that we would finish this race, but let's go to Chicago. We have to think forward.
How'd the arm feel?
Great. The arm is much better than my car right now.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Only 37 days since that injury. The arm feels great.
Nothing like being a 25-year-old superhero to come back from multiple fractures in only 37 days.
There is Christian making his move down low. Montoya tries to make it as they all come around Shinji Nakano. And Tarso Marquez just ahead of them now. The leader, Michael Andretti, works around Tarso. And now here comes Kenny Breck pass.
We're expecting pit stops here in the next few laps.
And it's a matter of fact,
there they are.
Elio Castroneves comes out of that battle at the front and heads down for some Penske service. Gary Gerald?
We understand no changes for Castroneves. You can't help but wonder, since he's been the first in the sequence both times, obviously not getting the mileage some of the other contenders are. We'll watch them perform what we expect to be routine service, fresh tires, and 35 gallons of methanol. Way up and moving. Just about 12 and a half seconds there as Castroneves is underway.
They can stop and start the front wing, and I'll play with the weight deck and everything. 10-4, 10-4.
You were listening to Elio
Half a
Castro.
turn or a whole turn?
See, Montoya has...
Up, down. Half. Ready? Get set. Go, go, go. You're clear, clear, clear.
Montoya's radio's not working up to snuff. They're capable of using it when they're close in, but he's backing it up with hand signals to his team to let him know what's happening. Kenny Breck comes in, Jan.
Yes, he does. Again, they expect to make no changes on the car. The fuel goes in pretty quickly these first few pit stops of the day. Slight delay on the left front, but not bad. Now the fuel's in. 13.4. They lost a second or two, but that's not the end of the world.
Mauricio Guzman was 12th when he came in, Gary.
Yeah, we're watching the service now for Castroneves' teammate, Gilles DeFerrin. Any wreck flashes by. DeFerrin is rolling in 12.3 seconds. Next time by, Michael Andretti will be in. Let's go to Jan.
Max Pappas is in.
Now we're going to give it a half turn of wing here. Reset your fuel.
They're going to give him some additional front wing, and they have to reset the fuel at every pit stop.
This is a good one.
11.9, so about 2 seconds quicker than his teammate on that stop.
Yeah, that was a good one. Rest of the field continues to come in. Here come the Newman Haas cars. Christian Fittipaldi and Michael Andretti. And here comes Cristiano D'Amata as well. D'Amata just a nose ahead of Michael as they head down.
Timmy in the pit lane. Remember, the surface could be a little slick. Hit your marks, Mike.
The surface changes there from asphalt to concrete as they dive in at the last moment. They have to back Michael up. They've got a problem. They lost about 3 seconds as he went too far, and they had to engage the fuel hose. So this will more than likely be a longer stop.
Just hold it.
D'Amata goes by.
Watch Timmy.
Tracy goes by. That's over 18 seconds, so they lost more than 3 or 4 seconds there by just rolling forward about a foot and a half too far.
And that was a great move by Cristiano D'Amata on the way in. We saw him pass Michael, getting on the brakes at the last possible moment as they hit the pit speed limit. You could see that differential and how much that cost Michael Andretti. But Cristiano D'Amata got almost a half a lap advantage coming out of the pits.
And remember, at racing speeds, you're slowing nearly 100.
During your brakes, you'll have an open box to get into your pit.
Slowing 180 miles an hour to get down to the pit speed limit of 50 miles an hour.
Hit your mark. Good stop.
John Tzanikis, known as TZ, calling on the radio, and Christian is perfect on the marks. No problem about getting too far on this stop. You get too far and the fuel hose simply won't extend to that critical coupling point.
Go, go, go.
That's a nice stop. 11.5 seconds for Fittipaldi.
Jimmy Vasser was the leader. Now he heads down to the Ganassi pits. This too should be routine service. 81st lap for Vasser. Adjustment to the front. Of course, they always stand by with the starter motor at the back just in case they stall the engine. And Jimmy Vasser is away.
Vasser asked for 1 turn of front wing on that stop. A little less grip, a little less drag, and hopefully faster on the racetrack.
Michael Andretti, he's fallen well down to 10th place, and this is part of the reason why.
Watch the signboard. You can see he's got the front wheels locked up. The big problem there, Paul, as Gary said, is they're slowing from 180 miles an hour, but they have to go from asphalt over to concrete. They've got carbon fiber brakes. It's difficult to get slowed down, and he just overshot his pit spot by just a little bit.
Yellow flag just came out. They report debris on the backstretch. So this is the second yellow of the day. Max Pappas has taken over the lead of the race with Elio Castroneves into second place. 83 laps are complete at the Michigan 500 with lead changes constantly. We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC station. Back at the Michigan 500 from South Central Michigan, just south of Brooklyn, Michigan. The 20th running of the Michigan 500. I'm Paul Page, Parker Johnstone, Jan Beekes, and Gary Gerald are in the pits. Our second caution flag of the day. They found 2 2-inch long bolts over on the backstretch. That could wreak havoc with the tires.
Well, it certainly could, and these cars are so fragile that it could easily go through the radiators or up through the under tray and create a very large incident on the track.
Michael Andretti turned out to be a devastating stop. And Gary, they're already going into the review trying to figure out what happened.
Well, it's amazing. These teams take so much pride in their pit work, and the slightest little mistake. Michael may be a little bit too close to the wall, overshot the mark by about a foot and a half, but the fueling couldn't couple cleanly because the hose is only so long. But they have a camera that's mounted on the top of their fuel tank looking down. It feeds a video system over here so that they have an opportunity to immediately pop out the videotape. They can look at the entire procedure, determine if in fact there was a mistake made on the part of the crew, if it was the driver or whatever, trying to learn, trying to hope that the next time he comes in, everything goes cleanly. And instead of an 18-second stop, it's the normal 12-second stop.
Michael Andretti, by far the veteran racer here. Over now, this would make his 17th start.
I don't know if the car ran over.
But he's only finished 5 events. So Michael Andretti, once again, the nemesis is on his back. As we watch Christian Fittipaldi, Max Pappas is the leader under caution, and his car owner Bobby Rahal spotting for him. The pace picks up as Max Pappas leads the field back to the green flag. Castroneves battles with Kenny Breck for second place. Christian Fittipaldi makes his move on Montoya and slots into fourth. But Max Pappas is leading this run at the Michigan 500. Breck moves inside of Castroneves. Castroneves tries the high side on Pappas. Max answers the challenge. It's going to be close at the line. Castroneves just barely gets him at the line. Kenny Breck sits third. Montoya low now on Fittipaldi. Michael Andretti suddenly slows.
Paul, I think it's something to do with the tires. The crew went over the wall with a fresh set. He continued to roll on by, but he's well off the pace. So we don't know if he'll be in on the next lap or if he's going to stick with it and try to get back up to speed.
Michael Andretti, who started on the outside of the front row, slowing. His day has gone from bad to worse. Max Pappas, who almost won this race a year ago, is leading, but here comes Castroneves. Castroneves puts a nose on him. Kenny Breck now moves up to challenge two. Pappas is working very well on the low line, though.
Max Pappas has some unfinished business here. He was the dominant force 1 year ago, leading 143 laps, running out of fuel within sight of the checkered flag. Max Pappas said his car was perfect after yesterday's warm-up, and he is determined to get back what was taken from his fingertips last year.
And Bobby Rahal, he is up on top of the grandstand. He said he was talking to his cars. He's not. He's actually on the cell phone at the time we said that. He, of course, serves as the interim president for CART. And as long as he's interim, he can still be involved. But he's been very, very careful not to give any appearance whatsoever of his conflict of interest. Would he decide to take the job? Well, then I think that's a whole different situation.
And he watches his two cars battle for the lead, with Kenny Breck now leading in front of Max Pappas. And from that onboard shot we had of Max, you could see the rookie stripes on back of the 1999 Indy 500 winner's car.
Castroneves works high, Breck works down low. Jan Vikas.
Kenny Breck now leading. The team is actually frustrated because they told him during the break, we don't want you to lead, we want you to follow, we want to save some fuel. Normally they're cheering when a guy takes the lead. Not in this case. They want him to hang back and save some of that precious fuel.
Yeah, just in the time we were able to get it to you, Jan, Kenny Breck dropped back into second, as you see as they flash across the line. Gary Gerald.
For Michael Andretti, a quick update. They thought that he was losing tire pressure at the left front, but apparently after he had slowed, the pressure started to build back up. Michael has gotten back up to speed. He's been told by Mario that you're now gaining on the leaders. He's still got a lot of ground to catch that main pack, however.
Michael is back in 16th place. He is the last car on the lead lap. Once again, we're going to show you those people on the move. Of course, Helio Castroneves has been absolutely spectacular. Breck DeMata, Mauricio Guzman is having a good run, and so is Michel Jourdain Jr. Third place, Pappas.
And the spotters and the guys in the pits really have to coach these drivers. It's very hard for them to slow down. You get in this huge draft, you get huge momentum, and it's just nearly impossible to lift off of the throttle, to pull out of the draft, to hang back. You get in this circus carnival ride that you just can't get off. It's dangerous because they have open wheels. If they touch, they can be catapulted into the air. But when the car's working well, it's one of the most exhilarating feelings you can have driving in the entire world.
Paul Tracy started on the pole, and he dropped well back to 14th, is now up to 8th, and beginning to work on Carpentier. And Michael Andretti's problem appears to have gone away. He dropped as far as 5 seconds behind 3 laps ago, but he's moved up now to 3.2 seconds behind the leader.
One of the advantages of a 500-mile race versus some of the shorter race distances the FedEx Championship Series races in is that if the car's not working well, you've got a number of pit stops to try to get the car back in balance to make it perfect for that day, those track conditions, the turbulence, the traffic. Paul Tracy is doing exactly that as he works his way back in the front. I think now Paul is probably very happy with the balance of his car, and he's just riding along up in 6th gear, trying to conserve the equipment. He's never won a 500-mile race. When I spoke to him last night, that's all he could think about. He knows how to do it. He's shown a new maturity. He's been conservative, and I think Paul's very happy with his car right now.
On the 93rd lap, Michael set the fastest lap of the race at 230.8 miles an hour. And there's Christian Fittipaldi up battling with Kenny Breck. Oh, Kenny Breck and Christian Fittipaldi get together. Off at 2.
And I just mentioned that if this had been a Winston Cup car, they would have just rubbed fenders. Nothing would have occurred, but with these open wheel cars, just the slightest touch, and it'll put someone in the fence or up into the air.
They're lucky the cars don't get airborne when they touch like that. So Kenny Breck, who had a spectacular ride
Michael,
going.
did you go through that debris?
To make sure Kenny's okay. In fact, the safety teams have now asked the drivers, you know, give us a wave or something. Here it is, Parker.
Coming off of turn 2, Kenny's almost up against the wall. Christian lets the car out a little bit to the outside. They make contact. Kenny locks his left front wheel in between Christian's right front and right rear. Now watch as they come off the corner. Christian starts to drift up high. Kenny heads for the outside wall, trying to squeeze in, and he just makes contact with that right rear wheel. Gets a little bit of air, makes heavy contact.
Yeah, he's lucky that car didn't go higher in the air when they touched wheels like that.
Kenny already up in the gray there on the outside. There's almost no rearward visibility to these cars. Christian may not have known that Kenny was getting a run coming back up the outside. You rely on your spotters to tell you that. And essentially, Kenny had no place to go at that point.
Really, the wall is actually what kept Kenny from going higher.
Now, Kenny's okay. You can see him lifting his visor there as he slowed down. As they come out, Kenny's already at the top of the groove. Christian just lets the car out a little too far. And like I said, Kenny had no more room to the outside against the concrete.
His car makes just a little move to the left as they come off the corner.
Now at this point, Christian thinks he's got the pass done. He starts to use the road to the outside, and I'm sure he just had no idea that Kenny was there.
Well, Christian Fittipaldi has headed into the pits. Gary, they're concerned about what the damage is to his car.
Yeah, Christian is radioed. He believes he has a puncture.
Just do the tire only. No fuel.
No
Just
fuel
do the
because
tire.
the pits are
Just change the
closed.
tire.
They can say that it's, and the crew is really angry about the fact that they won't be able to fuel. But that's what we've heard from the kart crew, or kart official, to the crew. So they've changed the tires. They're looking over the suspension. Now Christian goes back out, but he couldn't take benefit of that stop and add fuel.
Gary, there looked like there was some pretty heavy right side damage to Christian's car when he came in. Most everything from mid-car back on the right side pod appears to be damaged. So we'll keep track of Christian Fittipaldi as they clean up the debris from Kenny Breck's accident. You saw Kenny Breck was moving in the cockpit, appears to be fine. We'll be back. Back at the Michigan 500, where Jimmy Vasser, under this caution, pulled off of the course and through gate 12 at Michigan and has joined the spectators. Apparently something wrong with the gearbox on that machine was the first report. Now this Toyota Spotlight, we're going to take a look at the situation with Kenny Breck that set up the caution period. It occurred off of turn 2 on the 98th lap.
Kenny on the high line. Christian Fittipaldi lets the car out to the wall. No place for Kenny to go. Watch here. Watch the contact. Right front, the right rear of Christian Fittipaldi to the left front of Breck.
And
Can't do that with these open wheel cars.
The official word now is that Kenny Breck is okay. We assume that because, as Parker pointed out a little bit earlier, he actually reached up and opened his visor while he was still rolling almost at full speed just after the accident. There's your full field rundown. Here's a note that's going to distress the Roberto Moreno fans. Jan Bigas Bob is out of the race.
Yes, unfortunately he is. And Roberto, what put you out?
Well, this is racing. The Vision crew did again a good job today. Unfortunately, we had a handling problem and also a gearbox problem, which we're not sure what it is. But, you know, racing is like this. We've got ups and downs. With a bit of luck, those 2 downs that we had the last 2 races is our bad luck out of the way. And the Vision team will be strong back again, and we'll be fighting for the championship again.
And for Roberto, he talks about the downs. That's 2 races in a row. Gearbox has knocked him out.
As Gale Truis picks up the speed on the pace car and starts to leave the field behind, it will be Juan Montoya that'll bring the field back. When Max Pappas brought the field back out of the last caution, he really slowed the field down so much that they were actually saying, come on, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. Adrian Fernandez got his lap back, now runs in 8th place. There are 16 on the leader lap. Pace comes up for Montoya.
Green.
At the same time, Tracy comes around the outside.
The spotter stand for the drivers is located about 100 feet away from our booth, and as they did that, I saw numerous hands go up there. They were covering their eyes, watching them go down into turn 1.
Paul Tracy, who started on the pole, then fell back to 14th, now works his way up in the front. Catherine Evis is at the front of the field. Tracy, then Pappas. Tracy moves on the leader. Paul Tracy, who has never won a 500-miler, finished 3rd here last year. On the podium last week at Toronto.
Established a new track record in qualifying, besting Jimmy Vasser's effort from 1996 at 234.9 miles an hour. Had early handling problems, but during the course of those pit stops has now got the car working very well.
Montoya now comes up around D'Amata into 4th. Cindy Nakano has reported a problem. He's been dropping further and further back.
But I don't like that too much. Just drop back when you can.
Barry Green talking to Paul Tracy. I was about to say this is a cat and mouse game. Do you really want to lead? I think now the drivers are just seeing how their cars are out front in the lead in clean air. The smart thing to do is to fall back just a little bit, maintain contact with the leader, but use the draft to help carry you around, breathe the engine, get mileage, and wait till the last half of this race to sprint to the end.
Gil DeFerrin, who made a good move at the start and was up running with the leaders, is now back in 7th, Gary.
Yeah, and Paul, we had a report, and right now we're watching on pit road. Shinji Nakano has come to a stop directly in front of the last pit box, and CART officials have run out there to check on him. Revs come up, and now he starts to move the car, and I don't know if he's just going to try to pull it out of the way. That appears to be the case, yes. Now, as for DeFerrin, on that incident involving Kenny Breck and Christian Fittipaldi, we saw all that debris flying in the air. One of the chunks came down and actually hit DeFerrin, apparently on the left hand. He says it is hurting him considerably, but he is continuing to try to tough it out now that we're back under green.
But Gary, have they had a chance, the team had a chance to look at what the nature of that injury might be, or has DeFerrin been able to report on it beyond an impact?
Only heard that it had something to do possibly with the index finger on his left hand, and he's just trying to hang on. Meanwhile, concern over Christian Fittipaldi's car that stays on the track. Because he had to pit when the pits were closed, he goes to the back of the field for that last restart, and there was some concern about damage to the right side pod, but apparently it's not impacting the performance of the car at this point.
Christian Fittipaldi in 16th, but that's only 4.5 seconds back from the leader, Helio Castroneves. This is 4th place, Cristiano D'Amata.
And it's interesting now we've got two wounded cars with Adrian Fernandez and Christian Fittipaldi, with cars that are obviously producing a lot more drag, aren't as aerodynamically efficient as they should be. These teams spend lots of money, lots of time in the wind tunnel, especially for Michigan, getting the cars as clean as they possibly can. And yet it doesn't seem to impact the performance when you've got this huge draft carrying you down the back straightaway. It speeds up to 250 miles an hour.
Jan Beek's Paul Tracy came up to the front, did battle with the leaders for a bit, and now he's dropped back into 6th place.
Yes, in fact, I asked about the handling of the car. Did they have it fixed? And Barry Green told me that's why Paul Tracy wanted to lead, because his car is fine when he's on his own, but he's having problems with the handling as soon as he's in a turbulent airstream.
Well, now Tracy and Michael Andretti side by side. Tracy low, Michael high.
That's what we mentioned a little earlier, is these drivers are starting to test their cars, not only in traffic, but on the point for the conclusion of the race, so that they know when it comes to the last few laps, they can get out of the front, get out of the draft, and lead the race.
Here's how the engines are faring. An interesting battle there. It's a Honda out front, a Toyota in second, a Ford in third. Parker has said time and time again that at Michigan it's all about horsepower.
Well, it's all about horsepower if the chassis is right. Sometimes a perfectly balanced car can make up for a deficiency in horsepower. But we've seen now from the three lead manufacturers at this point of the season, from Honda, from Ford, and Toyota, they're all very close in horsepower, very close in drivability, very close in reliability. Right now, they're all getting about the same mileage. Depends really on the chassis and the driving style of the driver. Right now, there's a lot at stake, though, not only for the Drivers' Championship, but these manufacturers are fighting very, very hard for the coveted Manufacturers' Championship.
On board with Cristiano D'Amata, looking back at Max Pappas. D'Amata, 123 pounds, and I think that's soaking wet. Tiny guy, but boy, he drives a race car, looking for his first win in the series.
He nearly had it at our last race at Toronto. He's done very well on the temporary courses and at Portland this year. He's also very good on the ovals. They've just struggled at the beginning of the year to find the setup, and he and his engineer Ian Watt and his teammates engineer John Dick and Oriol Servia have come up now with a good super speedway setup, and also they think they found the secret to help them on the short ovals as well.
Michael tries Pappas. We'll show you speeds at the line.
Max lift out of the throttle.
You know, that's really interesting.
Michael tie, clear.
Michael comes around Pappas, but look there, Christian Fittipaldi with all that damage up on the right side of the car.
Keep it breathing.
They're worried about engine temperature on Max, aren't they?
Well, I think that might be a concern, because this is the longest these cars have run this year in these sorts of conditions. The problem when you get back in the draft, sure, you get a big toe, but you're also getting superheated air coming off the coolers of the cars in front of you. So the air that's coming through your radiators is significantly hotter than the guy at the lead who's just having ambient airflow through his radiators.
Newman Haas, first and second quick last time around, though Michael was quick that lap. Michael is now up working on Cristiano D'Amata. Pappas and Carpentier. Carpentier finally makes his presence known up toward the front of the field. His best finish thus far in the FedEx Series, a second. Still looking for his first. Carpentier ahead of D'Amata.
One of the things we might see is watch the top of Cristiano D'Amata's steering wheel. There's a set of LED lights across the top right there, and those will start to light up if he gets close to the red line of the engine, heading down into turns 1 and turns 3. Right now, though, it looks like Cristiano's they'll run 3 top gears, 4th, 5th, and 6th, depending on traffic, depending on top speed. It looks like Cristiano's in top gear right now, because usually you'll just start to see those LEDs start to illuminate. We didn't see any, which means he's being very conservative with revs right now.
Michael Andretti back up doing battle with the leader. He had it for a moment. Castroneves came around to the outside. Castroneves has it right now. Carpentier, his team did a good job the last pit stop.
And we just received a radio transmission going to Patrick. There's a lot of coaching that goes on, a lot of encouragement. They told him, hey, buddy, you're doing a great job. Maybe you should think about doing this for a living.
Carpentier's crew. A long stop dropped him back to 9th. He came back up here to the front. Now runs in 4th as we look down from the Honda Helicam. Castroneves and Andretti Montoya.
Physically, Paul, it's very demanding on the drivers. They're pulling up to 4 Gs in these corners. They're turning the steering wheel, having some load between 2 to 3 Gs or more for about 80% of the lap. But mentally, it's exhausting. You've got to know who's around you at all times. You have to keep track of what your car's doing. You're constantly making adjustments. You can't miss a moment's concentration. The drivers at the end will physically be tired, but mentally they'll be absolutely wiped out. Imagine the deepest concentration to play chess, but you're driving $1 million car, traveling 370 feet a second. Very, very high stakes, and you can't take a moment's rest.
Serbia and Tracy go side by side in a battle for 7th. Tracy takes it. Average speed now at 174.7 miles an hour. They set a blistering pace early on, nearly 20 miles an hour faster, but the cautions have cost them. The race record is owned by Al Unser Jr. 1990 at 189 miles an hour. Oh, Michael right up there. Almost touches the left rear of Castroneves as Michael goes for the lead again. Next time around will be the halfway point. 250 miles in the Michigan 500. Castroneves maintains the lead. So it's Honda, Ford, Toyota, Castroneves, and Andretti Montoya. Carpentier with some good moves up into 4th. We'll be back with more after these messages and a word from our ABC station.
The Michigan 500 on ABC Sports, brought to you by Honda, proud sponsor of the 2000 FedEx Championship Series.
At the Michigan 500, Michael Andretti and Helio Castroneves continue their battle for the lead. There have been 80 lead changes unofficially thus far in this race. I'm Paul Page with Parker Johnstone, Gary Gerald, and Jan Beekes. We have seen a great Michigan 500. Only 3 cautions to this point, but 7 different leaders and 24 official changes. Official means that that's the leader at the line. But more often than not, they pass coming off a 2 and again going into 3. We've seen that constantly. Out of the race thus far, Jimmy Vasser pulled over. Roberto Moreno, they told him to park it. Kenny Breck was involved in the accident in contact with Christian Fittipaldi. And Tony Kanaan went out of the race early. Tony is the defending champion, already a spectator here. But Gary Gerald, what happened to Jimmy Vasser?
Well, he just comes back out to pit road. What put you out, Jimmy?
I think something with the gearbox. You know, I got stuck in between gears one time, and then I got it out, and then it happened again. Just got there was no drive, and it was stuck in between gears, so something happened in the gearbox.
Is that car good enough to be up there to get a win or a podium finish today, do you think?
Oh, yeah, certainly. I was just, especially at the beginning before the first stop, getting really good mileage coasting behind the big train. And I think we went 2 or 3 laps longer than everybody. And then on the first stop, I don't know, but the guy who sends out Moreno sent him out right in front of me. And, you know, I was coming in my pit box, and he just wasn't even looking. He just sent him straight out in front of me, and we almost collided. And I had to hit on the brakes, and he skidded past my pit, and that was unfortunate. We went a lap down, and you know, it's just those kind of things that are happening. I know they happen to people, and they're happening to me, but you know, we keep our heads up around here and keep fighting, and you know, we'll be there.
We'll see him at the Target Grand Prix in Chicago on the shorter oval next Sunday.
I'm guessing this is going to bring a yellow out. It has not yet, but Mark Blundell has slowed, just coming off at turn 2. Frustrated with the lack of movement of the car. I'm guessing that what his problem may be is fuel.
He's just trying to work the banking a little bit to get it down off the extension apron off the inside of 2. He had just come out of the pits, and we were expecting the guys to come in for the next round of pit stops in the next couple of laps.
Michael Andretti and Helio Castroneves do not give it up at the front of the field. They continue to hammer at one another. There's the last pit stop. 98th lap for our top 6, and 135 laps are now complete. We're working 136. Jan?
Yes, Kenny Breck was one of the drivers you mentioned is out of the race. I can tell you he has been released from the infield care center, and he is fine, but he is hot. He doesn't want to talk to anybody yet, but the team says once he's calmed down, they will bring him out to pit road, and we'll try and talk to him.
Well, when you consider that the contact was with Christian, who Parker, there's the 100th unofficial lead change. Parker, it just appeared like Christian didn't even know that Kenny was there.
Well, we've seen a few problems with traffic the last few races with Christian. This is just one more incident, and really Kenny had no place to go. We've been watching the guys take care of each other on the racetrack. We've seen Michael and Castroneves leave lane and a half, almost 2 lanes open for the other driver to make sure that they're not taking their air away from them. They're giving them lots of room either down to the inside or the outside, and we just didn't see that in that incident coming off of turn 2.
Newman Haas team starts to give Michael Andretti the instructions for coming into the pits. For some, the stops have already started.
And it's a busy time for the drivers, Paul. On their way in, coming down this back straightaway, they'll start dragging their left foot.
Probably going to pit any second.
They'll heat up those carbon fiber brakes. Remember, they haven't touched the brakes the entire run. They come off the track at 230 plus miles an hour. As you said, they've got to slow 180 miles an hour down to that 50 mile an hour speed limit. They're readjusting their anti-roll bars to compensate for the fuel and for tire wear.
Elio Castroneves comes into the pits as Jill DeFerrin slows over on the backstretch.
Right back. 3, 2.
A problem for DeFerrin, but his teammate Jill DeFerrin comes out of the lead and into the pits, Gary.
Yeah, Castroneves coming right at us. Remember, he's been the leader in the pit sequence pretty consistently through the afternoon. Don't know what the problem is for DeFerrin. Have not heard yet. No changes on the aero package, it appears, for Castroneves. Fueling gets a little bit slower. He's out of there in under 13 seconds.
Well, they must have gotten Mark Blundell into a safe position because they did not turn on the yellow light. And we continue running at speed past the halfway point now on the 140th lap with Michael Andretti in the lead once again, and Juan Montoya, who seems to be comfortable sitting back in second, third, fourth place, just watching the lead.
And Jill DeFerrin has actually made his way all the way around the track back into the head of the pit lane. The last 2 things these drivers are going to do, Paul, during that 12 seconds of rest they get during the pit stop, they'll reset the fuel monitor and then reset the weight jacker. That's what Patrick Carpentier is doing right at this moment. So there's really no time to breathe, and they're telling him what changes they want. We can see the adjustment to the front wings there.
Parker, I can tell you briefly, I saw DeFerrin just go by. He has an extremely bent right front suspension.
Michael Andretti on the pit road. So Jan says that DeFerrin has, look at him lock those brakes as he tries to get it slowed down to the 50 mile an hour.
Watch your speed in the pit lane, Michael. DeFerrin is in the box ahead of us.
DeFerrin with damage on the car.
Look for Timmy and hit your box, Mike.
Going to be just ahead of Michael as he stops.
Tim Coffeen on that right front with the helmet cam, and as they were instructing Michael, DeFerrin came in dead stick. There was damage. We could see suspension problems right front. He gets the green light in 12.3 seconds.
There's the job I want, standing out in the right front of a car with all the cars in the field making the pit stop. Pappas is in.
Reset your fuel.
Jan?
He has reset his fuel, and they're not expecting to make any changes, but he wants a drink of water. At the same time you get it into gear. Get it up.
Juan Montoya.
You're clear.
Oriol Servia comes in as well.
Come with me, don't go past me.
Back in almost gets loose on Servia. Cristiano D'Amata spent a little extra time. Look at this. D'Amata, who was running so well, is suddenly climbing out of the car as they hose it down. Gary.
Just arriving from the Newman Hospital, or the target pit where Montoya made his stop, and they're scrambling to get Cristiano out of there. A lot of water dumped around the cockpit, so something was hot for a moment. Now he comes out, appears to be okay. Don't know what happened yet. We'll try to find out.
Well, you can see some scorching on the back of his driver's suit.
And the big problem with methanol is you can't see when it's burning.
Demata gives us a thumbs up. I'm okay. Everything's fine.
You can see him stretch the fuel and vent hose out. Obviously, he's got a hot clutch. It's starting to engage, pulled forward. They're going back to restart it. Then they jump back from the car. Obviously, they had a surface fire on the bodywork.
Not Cristiano. Cristiano, the report is he's okay. After some struggle with the steering wheel, they got him out of the car. Adrian Fernandez picked up the lead of the race, just stopped, and is now coming back up to speed. So on that round to stop some confusion up and down the pit road. The amazing thing is that, to me at least, is that Christian Fittipaldi still stood in 6th after that contact that took Kenny Breck out of the race, and despite the fact that Fittipaldi has some pretty severe damage on the right side of the race car. Their lead changes. Record, of course, 63-31 today after 29 last year. Michigan always gives us a good race. Those are official at-the-line lead changes. Andretti, Montoya, Castroneves, Pappas, the top 4. And they're all right together. So is Michael Andretti going to look for a 3rd win at the Michigan 500? It is possible today. The engine battle is still Ford, Honda, and Toyota.
Look in the mirror, what the hell happened to me? Whatever I had, that's I'm not the young kid that I used to be, but I'm on my way. I'm on my way, and I'm not running anymore.
Is Pennsylvania's Michael Andretti on his way to his 3rd win at the Michigan 500 and taking over the points lead in the Kart FedEx Series championship fight? He may very well be, but Helio Castroneves has been working him hard. And Parker, you've monitored that Castroneves has an interesting problem.
Well, the problem that we've had here in the past, Paul, is typically it's very, very hot at Michigan. All these guys are athletes. They've got heart rates sustained for 2.5, 3 hours in the 145 to 170 beats a minute range. They hydrate like crazy because they're used to having cockpit temperatures in the 130 to 140 degree range. Dehydration is your #1 enemy. Well, it's cool today. It's only 70 degrees. We've got the slight overcast. Helio Castroneves has called in and said that he needs to find a restroom fast because he's a little overhydrated and he still has a long ways to go.
That's Alex Tagliani that darted out alongside of Helio Castroneves and slides into 2nd place and comes back to try to do battle with the leader, Michael Andretti. Castroneves' teammate, Jill DeFerrin, just came in and climbed out of the car. We'll try to get him as Alex Tagliani takes the lead of the Michigan 500. Out of the race, and maybe Gary Gerald, you can now clear up some of the confusion of the stop, is Cristiano Demata.
Cristiano, can you tell us what happened and what led to all that confusion that put you out?
When Barrett, my crew chief, he moved away to go to the front wing. It was basically the same movement that we organized that was for me to go. So I thought was for me to go was misunderstanding. Our fault, we'll fix it for next race. Really, because we gave away a couple of points that were going to be important.
Now, and I understand the crew member he's okay. Everybody's all right. Nobody was hurt here.
No, at least that's good. From everything bad that happened here today, the good thing is everybody is fine.
We appreciate that. Thank you, Cristiano.
Michel Jourdain Jr., one of the Mercedes-powered cars in the pits. Remember, the team is Bentonhausen Motorsports. Our owner, Tony Bentonhausen, his wife, and two very close friends killed in an aircraft accident. Tony Bentonhausen's best finish, though, came here in the very first Michigan 581. Officially scored a 2nd. Roncho Carter won it, but there are a lot of people here that think that Tony Bentonhausen may have in fact won that race. Never scored for the race win. Alex Tagliani, the rookie, 157 completed laps. We work 158. And this rookie came forward with a great deal of verve and now runs well in front. This is really the first long lead we've seen stretched out in some time. Gary Gerald.
Joe LeBaron is on a cart being taken to the medical center. We heard the report that you got hit by debris. What's happened to your index finger here?
I think it's broken on the accident where Kenny went off. A piece, I think it was his rear wing, came right in my cockpit and hit my left hand, and it was really sore from then on and thereon. And we trying to brave it, but and you know, Kyle was handling well, and I was just biding my time there. But we got a hit on the front end by Jourdain, and it bent the right front suspension. That was that.
How hard was it to drive with the finger in that condition?
It was difficult, you know, because the whole hand started to go numb, and I kind of had to start driving only with my right hand. But you know, got to do what you got to do.
Well, the concern then becomes what happens for next week, and I guess you're about to go find out.
I'll be all right.
All right. He says he'll be all right. We'll take his word for it.
Keep in mind the drivers' heads are pinned, so if they're behind a wreck, there's a lot of debris. They have no ability to duck or to move from side to side. At these kinds of speeds, you can't make an abrupt movement with the steering wheel. I've seen half shafts, gearbox parts, pieces of engines flying, and you just close your eyes and hope that nothing hits you in a vital place. And I'm glad Gilles LeFerrin didn't have any serious injury in his finger.
Dario Franchitti now makes his appearance up at the front of the order as he starts to battle with Adrian Fernandez. Franchitti currently 8th, moves down the back step. Had a test with Jaguar at Formula One this week. Yellow comes out. Yellow comes out.
We have a player's car off the 4th corner.
And Alex Tagliani, who had just picked up the lead, catches the wall off of turn 4 and comes to a stop in the tri-oval. Remember, Tagliani had a chance to win the first race at Homestead, but he passed the pace car. And then at Rio, he had several chances to win, spun on restarts. Leading the race here today, he hits the turn 4 wall.
Hey, Tag, how you doing?
And this is the first time.
Alex Zimmerman trying to find out if his driver is okay. Tag has not yet answered him. There's what happened, Parker.
Oh, did you see
hit.
Castroneves just missed the back of the car?
Well, not just Castroneves. That looked like Tracy that came through low there.
That was very close. As he came off the last corner, Tagliani's car got away from him. The back end stepped out, rotated into the outside wall. Close call by the trailing drivers there.
They were trying to radio Tagliani, make sure he was okay. Of course, the accident may in fact have damaged the radio system. That's a safety 2 truck from CART. Dr. Terry Trammell is the one straddling the car. A world-renowned orthopedic surgeon who cares not only for most of these drivers, but for many of the athletes. Here, Parker, here you go.
Watch Tagliani. Watch the back of the car here. You're full throttle coming off this corner. You're focused on the outside wall, trying to let the car out. Watch Castroneves here. He starts to go high, thinking that the car will continue to spin low. Just misses the right rear of Tag's car. Impact here, oil fire. Now watch it slide back to the inside. Michael goes low. Montoya goes low.
And Christian Fittipaldi.
This is Christian Fittipaldi. Look at the debris field trailing that car. Huge wreck on the outside.
Tagliani climbed out of the car and climbs over the wall. He's obviously okay, Jan, but he was communicating with the crew just before the accident?
Yes, he was. In fact, he called in and said, don't change anything on this car. We are fast in all 4 corners. But Parker, as you know, when you're fast in all 4 corners, it means you're on the edge of being loose, maybe too close to that edge.
And that's the problem that we saw down in Rio, Jan, and this is really the first time since that race that he's come back to the forefront to lead. And it just got away from him. Rookie inexperience. Remember, he's one of the few drivers that have very little experience on super speedways.
While his rookie year has been somewhat successful, that lack of experience has cost him greatly in at least 3 races now. So Castroneves, under this caution, picks up the lead of the race. It's the 164th lap right now. Lined up behind Castroneves, Michael Andretti, Montoya, Fittipaldi. Tracy, who had a very close call going down low on Tagliani as he came off of the wall. Don't forget, we've got that British Open wrap-up show presented by MasterCard coming up next on ABC Sports. Well, there's Helio Castroneves. Scored his first victory this year. Very likable young Brazilian. Like most of the Brazilians racing in the series, they actually call South Florida home.
And I tell you, after an accident like that, if you're one of the following drivers, your first reaction is usually to hit the button, the radio push to talk button, and
Call
scream.
us when you're coming into pit lane.
Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Just got a quick eye contact with Rick Reineman, works the right front for Castroneves. All the crew saw the big screen. They saw how close that was. He put his thumb and his forefinger about 1/4 of an inch apart, and then he tapped on his heart as if to say, how close can you come? Now they spring into action. We've got triple pit action for you here now as the leaders all try to hit their marks.
Castroneves on the top, then Michael and Montoya. First, second. Montoya. It's going to be good for Montoya.
And keep an eye on Pappas. He had a great stop down here at pit in.
8.6 for Montoya. What a great stop that is. And that gives him some vastly needed track position for when they come back. So with now yet another stop complete, we begin to move toward the final segments of the Michigan 500. Still under the caution with that 8.9-second pit stop. Juan Montoya is the leader of the race. As we show you the field summary, they already have Alex Tagliani's car on the hook and taking it back to the paddock area. 166 laps are now complete in this 20th running of the Michigan 500, and the race is still very far from being decided. Remember, twice in the history of this race, the race has been decided in the last mile. Some of the owners watching from high above and down in the pit area. We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC stations. Well, Montoya has all of those as he leads the field under the caution. We give you the pit summary last time around. And Parker, you're beginning to think ahead now toward the end of the race with 168 laps complete and thinking about what the fuel and pit stop strategy may in fact be as we go to the end of this run.
We've been monitoring a lot of communications with the drivers. They're talking about conserving fuel, trying to make it in one more stop. But according to my fuel calculations, they're going to have aerial refueling to go to the end of this in one more stop if it stays green.
Here's the Budweiser Hard Charger Award. Luis Garcia Jr., there he is, 71 points over. Cristiano D'Amato's already out of the race. Adrian Fernandez, now they did this on the 89th lap and got out of the sync of the race. Patrick Racing does this quite a bit, don't they, Gary?
Yeah, and they had determined that he would have to get 2.5 miles per gallon the rest of the way to make it on one more stop. Well, they figured, I guess that was too much, so they've topped him off now. He goes back out. Let's go to Jan.
Well, Kenny Breck has made his way out from the medical center. And Kenny, I know you were really hot when you got out of the car. Now that you had a chance to think about it, what happened in that accident?
Well, you know, a place like this, you run side by side for basically 500 miles. You can't get away from each other, so it's very important that you leave room for the other competitors. And I was on the outside of another car, and he didn't leave room for me. And yeah, that's what happened.
Had you run side by side with Christian any place else on the racetrack prior?
Yeah, you ran side by side everywhere. I guess, I don't know if he didn't see me, if his mirror fell off or his spotter fell asleep, I don't know, but it was unfortunate. It's racing, it happens, but we have to go on to the next one.
All right, we're going back to green. Thank you, Kenny.
And remember, it's been some time since that accident. As we go back to green flag racing in, so Kenny has had a considerable time to calm down. Here is Paul Tracy as on the restart. He moves to the lead, getting around Montoya. Montoya drops into second, Castroneves to third. Then Michael, then Christian Fittipaldi. Franchitti moves way, way low on Fittipaldi, while at the same time Pappas goes high. Michael down inside Castroneves. Carpentier tries to move down below the white line, trying to move on Fittipaldi. Again, Fittipaldi with a lot of damage on the right side of that car as a result of the contact with Kenny Brecht. But it hasn't seemed to slow him down that much at all. Carpentier. And Carpentier takes him. Now Carpentier lines up on Dario Franchitti. Franchitti's teammate Paul Tracy still on point. Castroneves works high. Montoya works low. Everybody splits out. Looks for the pass. Tracy maintains the lead. Montoya has to come up high behind him. Michael moves low. And then drops back into line, but here comes Castroneves. And Michael comes low. Pappas comes up high and slows. Boy, that cost Pappas. Tracy still leads. Now Castroneves gets a nose in front of him, and Castroneves takes the lead. Montoya comes up on Tracy. I'm almost thinking at this point, Parker, it's a question of not do I want to lead, don't I prefer to be back just trying to save fuel.
I was just thinking exactly that. You see Max Pappas hanging back. I think Michael's hanging back a little bit. If you're going for fuel strategy, you don't want to be at the front. You want to stay clear of trying to run in clean air so that you can take advantage of the draft, breathe the throttle going down into 1 and 3, turn the fuel mapping down as much as possible, run the engine as lean as possible. Where Max Pappas is right now, I think, is a perfect position. It's going to be interesting. The yellows could have, if there's a yellow before the end, it could affect, obviously, the entire complexion of this race. But I still think they have to make 2 stops if they keep it under green. If you have to make 2, maybe you go out front.
Montoya coming up on the slower car, Memo Gidley. Jan Biggis, you got a couple of updates for us.
I do. With Dr. Steve Olvey, how is Alex Tagliani?
Alex is fine. Jan will be released anytime. He's in there talking to Gilles de Ferran right now.
Crew member for D'Amata?
The crew member for D'Amata has several abrasions of his extremity with some bruising, but no fractures. We're having our physical therapist see him now, and he'll be released before too long.
And finally, Gilles de Ferran.
Gilles de Ferran, unfortunately, has a small fracture of his left index finger. I'm waiting till the end of the race for our orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Terry Trammell, to take a look at him to decide what we need to do about that.
Thanks.
Okay.
Patrick Carpentier drops down inside of Helio Castroneves. Tracy continues now to surge up to the front and battle with Montoya.
You have to be very careful here. Rick Mears, the master of the super speedways, used to preach you spend 400 to 450 miles getting the car right, being patient to sprint the last 50. But I'm not seeing much patience here. Everyone just looking for clean air through the corners to get back together on the straightaways for the draft. And I think as we get to the end of this, we'll see less of the consideration for other drivers. Right now they're leaving openings so that they're not taking air off each other's cars. But I think we're going to see some chopping and slicing as we get in the last 50 laps of this race.
Pappas down inside Carpentier. That red car that you're seeing out in front, Memo Gidley replacing Roberto Fontana for this race and the race next week at Chicago. He's giving that car a nice ride in front of the leader. There's Gidley. Tracy is actually the leader, just behind Gidley. He's doing his best to keep from going a lap down, and he's doing a very nice job of it. First, second, and third, Honda, Toyota, Honda, and then 2 Ford. We'll be back with more from Michigan. Our Toyota Spotlight takes a look at the prowess at 500-mile races of Juan Montoya. Finished second last year by the narrowest of margins. They'd moved the line 3 feet. He would have won it. He did win this year at the Indianapolis 500. He was leading just seconds ago, and Castroneves got around him. He dropped back to third. Paul Tracy is still in there. So is Michael Andretti as they chase Castroneves. But we heard a radio conversation between Barry Green and Paul Tracy while we were away, and Green said, "They're using us, mate." It's exactly what you're thinking.
That's what I had said a little earlier, and I said Paul's going to feel cheap and dirty when this is all over, because if he's out leading, the other guys are getting better fuel consumption. Their engines aren't getting the workout that Paul's was, and they told Paul to back off and not lead. They've said the same thing now to Michael Andretti and Juan Montoya. Juan Montoya, though, says, hey, if they make me, I'll go ahead and lead this thing.
Helio Castroneves now has the biggest lead anyone's had this day. 2.2 seconds.
Just stay in the draft, try to get mileage. We need mileage here. A lot of guys are going to be playing this game.
Jan Vikas.
Alex Tagliani is out of the medical center. You're okay. What happened?
I don't know what happened, but if it's a driver mistake, I'll take full responsibility of it. But I was surprised by a bump on the track, and I just lost the rear of the car. I don't know why. I mean, I'm very sorry for the Players Foresight team, because my car was great, and we had the car to win today. It was just as soon as we took the lead, I was lifting in some of the corners and upshifting just to wait for everybody, but it seems that nobody wanted to pass me, so we got a very good car.
Did you take a different line that you might have hit an unexpected bump?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Maybe like a middle line just to save my tires. I was not like, squeezing the line up to the apron, but it was very difficult because the car was great and it was good behind traffic. And as soon as I got out to the lead, I was flat out all the way around, and I had to wait because I didn't want to use too much fuel. And suddenly I got surprised because the car reacted very strangely over that bump, and I lost it.
Well, guys, he said he had a great time out there, and thankfully, he's okay.
Helio Castroneves, 2.6 seconds out in front now. I'm not so sure that's the wisest strategy. While we were away, we want to show you what happened to Max Pappas, because he got in the middle of this.
Drivers lift in the middle of the straightaway. Paul, I think this man, Max Pappas, feels that this track owes him. He's playing a very intelligent, very mature game of staying back, staying out of the lead. I think he's got a great car underneath him. I think the Ray Hall Racing crew has given him exactly what he needs to sprint those last few laps, and I think he's just being patient and coy right now.
Castroneves, the gap is narrowed down a little bit, 1.7 miles or 1.7 seconds from the leader. Back to second place, Andretti, Gary Gerald.
Well, every one of these leaders here, all the radio conversations all pertain to conserving fuel, and now the word is becoming more definitive. It's just to the point, if you don't get us better fuel, you're definitely going to have to make an additional stop. These drivers are trying their best. Nobody wants to lead. Mauricio Gugelmin said, find me a rabbit, or he was told, find a rabbit. We need mileage. And up and down the line, it's the same story. Castroneves, I guess, right now is the rabbit. But unless somebody comes up with some dramatic savings, they're all going to have to come in for that extra stop, and nobody wants to.
Well, Gary Gerald, if Castroneves is the rabbit, why would he want to be? Why doesn't he just drop back?
Well, maybe they've already decided that they think everybody's in that same boat, and they're all going to have to make the extra stop anyhow, so why not get as much of advantage as you can in case you lose a second or two in the pits? Just guessing.
1.9 seconds, Castroneves to Andretti last time around.
The other driver that's playing into the strategy is, don't forget that Adrian Fernandez did that top-up on lap 169 6 laps later than anybody else did. He's used the strategy successfully before with the Patrick Racing team. Remember at Motegi, some other races where everybody else has tried to stretch the fuel, they've had to dive in. And there's Adrian Fernandez all alone on the track fighting the checkered flag.
Oily old team manager Jim McGee coming up with that kind of strategy. Won Rio for him. Carpentier makes his presence known once again. Carpentier goes to second. Michael ahead of Pappas, Montoya down to the left. Time they pitted. That's at all accurate.
Just remember, they all came in under the yellow under lap 163. And once again, Fernandez came in 6 laps later on lap 169 to top up. And on that onboard briefly, you could hear Max lifting again.
Everybody's on a lap 163 stop with the exception of Fernandez.
One of the unique features of this track, you see it on the super speedways, the long contests. We've talked a little bit about the carbon fiber brakes. But the other thing that a couple of the engine manufacturers have had to do is they put in an additional oil tank. The engines are running very few rings for compression and oil to minimize the frictional losses, and therefore they use a lot of oil. So during the midway point of the race, these drivers have an additional switch where they have to pump several quarts of oil back into the engine to make up for the oil consumption during the course of the race.
Normally in a 500-mile race, at about this point, as they approach the last 100 miles of the run, we're saying, now it's time for them to really throttle up and go racing. They've been racing right from the get-go. Helio Castroneves is the leader as the strategy now begins to play. Back at the Michigan 500, we just crossed over the 200th lap. Castroneves is still the leader. He now leads by a wide 9.4 seconds. Oriol Servia in the past couple of laps has charged to the front, moves into second place ahead of Paul Tracy, Juan Montoya, and Dario Franchitti. But Castroneves, are they playing the same strategy we've seen Penske go time and time again and try to run them way out there?
I think that's exactly what they're doing. If they have resigned themselves to 2 additional stops, they're going to put Castroneves at full power, send him out and say, okay, we're going to do this stop and then a splash and go at the end. Try to get as big a lead as you can. But we watch Oriol Servia. Remember, he spent the last few years here in Indy Lights. He's used to having 18, 20 cars all within a second running in a big fur ball going around this track. He's very comfortable in this group of cars.
A giant lead, 9.3 seconds. Giant with regard to this race for Helio Castroneves. There's second place Servia. Bright yellowish green car with Tracy.
Now this drafting group is using Servia. They spread out in the corners so they can get clean air over the cars. They go down the straightaways to get back in line. They're up in top gear. They've got it leaned out, drafting behind Servia. We've heard a few reports that guys are going to be about 5 laps short of making it in one more stop. So they're really trying to conserve fuel. But as you said, Paul, I think Castroneves says, all right, fine. If we've got to make 2 stops, I'm just going to go.
Specifically, that was the report from Patrick Carpentier. But it also sounds like Max Pappas may actually be right on the game plan, currently running in 9th, 10 seconds behind the leader. So while that group is back some distance from Castroneves, they are still all bunched up.
And remember, Castroneves was the first of the leaders to come in since the beginning of the race. We expect that he's going to be in just a few laps, and then we'll see how this game plays out.
Jan Bikas, what's going on with Mad Max?
Well, you called it, Paul. They have called him on the radio, and they said the last time or the next time you come onto pit road, it will be your last time. You only have to make one more stop. Now, they also know that everyone up and down pit road monitors those radio transmissions. So maybe they're just laying it out there to scare everybody thinking that they could make it, because, boy, by our calculations, it would be tight.
Everyone up and down pit road and about half the grandstand with their scanner. It's become quite a hobby. Helio Castroneves on the pit road, lap 205. Gary?
I think part of that strategy we were talking about, we failed to take into consideration the fact that he has been the leader in the pit sequence all afternoon long. So they knew apparently that they had no shot, or at least unless they got a huge amount of yellow. So he pushed the lead as much as he could. Now at that 50-mile-per-hour pace, he comes down and he hits the marks, and the Penske crew goes to work one more time. With these big tanks that are used for the fuel in 500-mile races, the fueling, gravity-fed, gets a little slower late in the race. He's ready. The revs are way up. 12 seconds and counting. Now he's clear to go. 13.8.
Helio comes back out. Servia picks up the lead of the race. It'll be 45 laps to the end for Helio Castroneves.
Well, we talked about at the beginning of the program, if you can pull out 1, 2, 3, 4 laps over the course, 6 or 7 stops, that makes a huge difference. 18, 20 plus laps by the end of the race. And that's the difference between making it to the end now on that one last stop, or Castroneves being resigned to one more stop now before the end.
Oriol Servia comes out of the lead into the pits. Tracy and Carpentier follow him in. 200.
You on the marks. You need to get on the marks.
208th lap. Jan?
This would be a bit early, I would think, to make it all the way to the end. And as Gary said, the fuel will take a little bit longer, and they'll be absolutely sure they get all of it. You see the vent hose right above him. They wait till they see fuel in that vent hose.
Watch down.
There it is.
Speed limit, watch your mirrors.
Now the question remains, can he make it to the end?
And Oriol Serbia leaves, and he gets out of here now. He got some companies. He heads for the pit exit here in a flurry of smoke after about a 15.4 second stop.
Well, Tracy got a position on Serbia and Carpentier with that round to stop. Michael Andretti becomes the leader with Montoya working on him. They've carried it now to the 209th lap.
These guys have averaged about 2 miles per gallon. They've gone about 35 laps through this whole race. Well, now having to go 41 laps, they're going to have to get upwards of 2.35, 2.4 miles per gallon. According to my fuel chart, we're talking a 20% increase. That's a dramatic difference in fuel economy.
Montoya took a fast turn off of the course and came for the pits. So did Max Pappas, Jan.
Yes, and last time he had just a smoking fast pit stop. We'll see how fast they can do this one. Of course, he has one more lap on some of the other guys. Oh, baby. There it is. Go. Gary?
Wing change for Juan Montoya. Radio problems continue. This is taking much longer than usual. He's finally moving at 14.5 seconds. They were making the wing adjustment based on his hand gestures.
Michael Andretti comes off the lead and onto the pit road with Dario Franchitti.
Watch your speed in the pit lane, Mike. Christian is already pitted. Square it up. Remember, the surface is slick. Nice and easy.
Dario Franchitti right behind Michael as Michael headed in. Gary?
Good marks, Mike.
Michael Andretti comes in now. Boy, he's been so picture perfect every time he's come gliding in today. Being very careful, very precise. That's experience. Now running his 17th 500-mile event in Michigan. He's gone.
Oh, this is going to be good. Now Franchitti gets him. Oriol Serbia will be given the black flag for a drive-through penalty. He got 2 wheels over the line, where the officials demand that there be 4 wheels under the line. The leader of the race is now Fernandez.
And we talked about Pat Patrick and Jim McGee. This is how the race will now unfold. He hasn't come in for his last stop yet. When he does and he exits, he will have more fuel than anybody else on the track. He'll be able to run full power, more revs, and that should give him a significant advantage going to the checkered flag.
We're on the 212th of 250 laps. He can hold out just a little bit longer. Will it be his last stop?
It will be. I don't think there's any doubt. Some of the other guys, I think, unless they are just really conservative, they'll have to do a splash and go. But now Adrian's headed into the pit lane.
So Fernandez comes in to make what I'm sure Patrick Racing hopes is his last stop. The question is, will it be? It seems like everyone else probably going to be dropping into the pits for a splash and go right at the end of the race. Tires are changed. The fuel flows. Clearing out some debris on the right rear of the car.
Well, they had problems getting that debris out of there. Adrian started to creep, and they were still tugging. I don't know if they got it all out or not.
Yeah, one of the guys came over and said, let him go, grabbed his shoulders.
And a big change on the front wings on Fernandez's car as well.
Elio Castroneves takes the lead back over. So, did Fernandez cut it close enough? Can Castroneves drive away? We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC station.
The Michigan 500 on ABC Sports, brought to you by Brewery Fresh Budweiser, official beer of CART. This Bud's for you.
You're looking down on the Michigan Speedway from the Honda Helicam. Elio Castroneves has just completed his 219th lap of the 250 scheduled. We have had 124 unofficial lead changes, 44 officially among 10 different drivers. Castroneves leads. Adrian Fernandez came out into second place, and there's where the game is. Castroneves trying to get as much of a lead as he can on the remainder of the field so that he can dart into the pits for a splash and go and finish this race in front. While Fernandez, by all good guesses as we look at the pit summary, And Servia suffers heavily because of his penalty. By all guesses, Fernandez goes all the way to the end as they go 4 wide again. Gary?
I can't believe it every time I look up and watch him go 4 wide into that first turn. We just got word from the Fernandez camp. They think they've got the fuel. They think that being last in the sequence that he can get here. And that, of course, as you said, is the absolute...
Oh! Christian Fittipaldi gets in trouble. Takes a long ride on the grass. The car stays to the ground. And he doesn't touch a thing.
The only thing that came off was the front shock cover. The only wild card, the only variable was the yellow flag, Paul. This is just what the other drivers were praying for, racing with Adrian Fernandez.
Christian has had enough, though. He throws the steering wheel out of the car and starts to unbuckle. Well, he just starts right up.
He misjudged the pull-out. He pulled hard to the left and made contact with the right front wheel.
And there is the luckiest man in this race yet today. He's limping, though.
That car took a heck of a ride. It may not have had any specific damage, but going through the grass at 230 miles, it looks like he banged his knee or his ankle.
Up on his helmet there, that's the Hans device that Christian is wearing, trying to help protect from neck injuries, neck and head injuries.
You can see him. He pulls out, nearly gets Max Pappas as well, clips the back of his teammate's car, Michael Andretti. Christian Fittipaldi is so fortunate this car didn't hook wheels in the grass or over those access roads and start to tumble. Very, very fortunate. Now watch, he makes a dramatic move pulling out from behind Michael. Comes out, nearly collects Max Pappas. Just completely misjudged, pulling out to the left there on the way down the back straightaway.
I'm worried about Christian, though, limping away from the car like that. He's a superb athlete. And now asks his kart safety team, they've got to help him. He runs triathlon all the time, so to think that he has any kind of injury from that, the bouncing certainly would have done that to him. Max Pappas, I don't think Pappas missed Fittipaldi by more than about 4 inches. Castro Neves still the leader. Next Monday, July 31st, the NFL kicks off its 31st season on ABC as we head to Canton, Ohio, where Jerry Rice and the 49ers will face Drew Bledsoe and the Patriots. The Hall of Fame game. We're under caution once again at a most opportune time. It's because of the incident involving Christian Fittipaldi. Yellow helmet back there. This was a most frightening accident. He just barely missed Pappas. And Pappas almost got over into Tracy.
And until you've driven on a super speedway, you can't understand the feeling of helplessness when something goes wrong. You have no idea how fast you're going until you get off. Keep in mind, Christian was probably doing 245 miles an hour plus when he hit the grass.
Castro Neves up crowding the pace car. His team was laid out, ready to refuel him.
Paul, he is.
There he goes. He made the turn, Gary.
Yeah.
So Elio Castro Neves comes off the lead and into the pits. He did, in fact, need fuel. At the starter stand, they're saying 1 more lap to go. Oh, excuse me, Montoya comes in too. It's going to be a little longer than that. I thought for a moment they were going to get caught with the field increasing speed to come to the green. Montoya and Castro Neves both make their stop.
Final load of fuel, and they are giving him fresh Firestone rubber as well. No aerodynamic changes. It's a quick fuel complete, 9 seconds. So he is gone, and Montoya is right behind, and Montoya goes by him.
Montoya got him just at the blend line, but I think it was clean to the blend line. So Montoya, Castro Neves, they both stop. It's going to be a sprint to the finish.
Paul Tracy back at Michigan is on pit road, getting a splash and go.
Speed limit, and no violation on the exit. No violation on the exit.
No new tires for Paul
Fuel position
Tracy.
is correct, so you're getting ready for a green flag the next time by. No mistakes on that exit, though.
Next time by, he will get the green and all the fuel he wants to use.
Juan Montoya and Elio Castro Neves came out 8th and 9th. We saw Castro Neves get fresh tires, and that would seem to me beyond the fuel to be the real advantage you'd want to get.
Well, I think it is. We talked about track position all day long and the advantage that Fernandez would have, but with this yellow flag, that's all gone out the window. Coming at the back of the field like Tracy has means absolutely nothing. You watch Castro Neves, Montoya, and Tracy, within a couple laps, they'll be back at the front.
Lot one.
Adrian Fernandez, Carpentier, and Petty.
Lot one.
Top three, pace comes up. They're not going to give it the green. No green on that start. Gary Gerald.
We did not have a good look at Montoya on his stop. We were with Castro Neves. We saw Castro Neves get the fresh tires. Just checked with Montoya's crew. He did not change tires. So he's got old Firestones on. He does have the fuel, however, that he can go full rich to the end. Now let's check at the other end of the pits with Jan.
Well, during the caution flag, they called to Max Pappas and said, Max, we're a little disappointed in your yellow fuel mileage. He says, oh, I'm sorry. Then he calls back a few minutes later and he says, just make sure you tell me when I can blow past all these guys. Well, they just called him now and said, you've got all the fuel you need. Go for it.
Have at it. Look at the field summary. Pappas is fifth.
Going green. Hold on.
Hold on is right.
Here we go. Green.
Fernandez brings them back to the green. Franchitti moves high. Michael comes low. They work to split Carpentier. Michael gets down under him, goes to second.
And this is the Saturday night main event, sprint to the finish. Castro Neves, the only guy with fresh tires. It'll be a slight advantage.
Franchitti comes back at Carpentier.
Oh, they're close there.
That fights for third.
Any courtesy that the drivers have been extending to one another during the course of this race is about to evaporate.
He used to be my friend. Michael Andretti takes the lead away from Fernandez. Here comes Franchitti. Not meaning you, Parker, meaning the guys to one another. Max Pappas now begins to work on Carpentier for fourth. There's Pappas down low on Carpentier. Fight for second. Fernandez grabs second.
Oh, look how close they are up on the exit there. That's exactly what I was talking about. Adrian left him a car width and a couple inches out to the wall. Dario tucked in back behind.
While we watch this at the front, Montoya is going just as fast as he can. He's up to seventh now.
And you can see him there.
Overtake anytime you want.
Castro Neves up to sixth. You can see him right there at the back.
Barry Green telling Paul Tracy to use the overtake button. That puts it at full rich, full advance on the timing. There goes Montoya. And here he comes.
Montoya's not been up at the front of the field since the 164th lap, but he spent a lot of time in second place. Andretti stretches the lead to 0.8 of a second. Montoya goes alongside Franchitti. Fernandez has fallen all the way back to fifth. They're going to the closing laps now. Andretti, Montoya, Franchitti. It's going to be a fight to the finish. We've been away. Juan Montoya has moved up to do battle with Michael Andretti, and they have been seesawing back and forth in a battle for the lead. Andretti has just taken the lead back from Montoya. At the same time, Dario Franchitti and Max Pappas are battling for third. But on the last couple of laps, Pappas is showing a little smoke or a little vapor, something at the back of the car. Here comes Montoya once again for the lead. And the 240th lap.
And the gloves are off between these two. They've been chopping each other, taking the air off each other's car. I think Montoya's got a stronger car underneath him right now, but he can't break the draft with Michael. He's been able to extend it 8, 9 car lengths, but then Michael picks up the toe and goes right back. Look at Montoya, push him up high, going down into the first corner.
Montoya low, Michael high. Concern about spray off the back of Mauricio Guzman's car. They've given him the black flag. He was running 9th.
There.
This is the fight for the lead in the Michigan 500. But these aren't the only two really in this fight.
Every once in a while, you'll hear the voice of the spotter just say clear, letting the driver know that he can move up or come down.
Last time around, the scoring computer showed the interval first to second at 1/1000th of a second.
Michael and Juan are giving each other room, but they are definitely pushing each other to the far ends of the groove, up into the gray. Whoa, look at the move down across. Juan saw Michael come up for the draft. He cut right back down to the bottom.
49 lead changes at the line throughout the run. With 8 laps to go at the Michigan 500. Michael coming back at Montoya.
You can see the power of the draft there.
Last week on the streets of Toronto, we said that that 40th win for Michael would help be an incentive. And it has given him new life, new vigor. Pappas continues to battle with Franchitti for 3rd. Then Carpentier, Castroneves, and Fernandez.
There.
Montoya and Andretti, both in Lola chassis, being followed by a couple of Bernard chassis. But right now, it's Toyota versus Ford. Andretti versus Montoya.
Just at our 50th lead change.
6 to go. 6 to go.
In that engine battle, Toyota v. Ford. That's for enormous bragging rights.
For Juan Montoya, this is his 4th 500-mile race. For Michael Andretti, his 37th. Montoya, the only other driver in this series to compete in another 500-mile race.
Oh, Mikey makes a quick move to dart out, grabs the lead again from Montoya.
And right now, these two are trying to figure out the ultimate strategy that puts them
5 to go. 5 to go.
a nose ahead right there at the start-finish stripe. Do they have to be high or low going down that back straightaway into the last corner so they can draft up and lead coming off of turn 4? Maybe you want to be second. Maybe you've got enough time to pop out and draft by. But it looks, I've been watching this game, Paul. It's been very, very close. The following driver going into turn 3 can get up side by side, but can't get a definite advantage by the time they get to the start-finish stripe. If start-finish was down another 50 to 100 yards, it would work.
The timing line is a little bit down this year. They had to move it down a little bit just to get a good cut into the track surface for the computerized scoring antenna that reads the transponder. Tony Kanaan last year took the lead and won this race in the last mile. John Paul Jr. did the same racing with Rick Mears. Last mile of the race, took the lead and the win.
You can see that time what Montoya did is he blocked off the inside going into turn 3. Whoa, left Michael the high side. And if Montoya can get a little farther out, he'll break the draft. He's still putting up a big enough wind shadow at this distance for Michael to get him.
Max Pappas finally had his problem develop into something truly serious and is off the run. Jan Beekes.
He called on the radio and said, I think the engine's gone. He's just trying to bring it home if he can.
Montoya, Andretti, Franchitti, now Carpentier to 4th. Castroneves and Fernandez battle for 5th. But the big fight is here at the front of the field.
Will it play out this way? Will you be able to draft on that last lap down the backside? Let's see if Montoya can come back before the start-finish stripe. It doesn't look like it.
Last lap, 1 to go.
Michael wanted the lead with 1 lap to go.
I'm surprised at that. But Juan takes it back.
Montoya down inside. Montoya takes the lead of the race. Tarso Marquez, a slower car just ahead. Michael darts out on the backstretch. Michael tries to get it down inside. Montoya's going to stay right there on the outside. The slower car is just ahead. Montoya. Now Andretti, and they almost touched. They may have touched. The slower car is going to be a factor as Montoya brings him to the line. And Montoya takes the Michigan 500. What a finish. 4/100ths of a second. Montoya over Michael. And Montoya's 9th career win.
What a brilliant move. Michael Andretti thought he would box Montoya behind Marquez. Instead, Montoya picked up Marquez's draft and was able to use that to pull ahead of Michael Andretti. The timing couldn't have been any more perfect.
So Juan Montoya has taken the win at the Michigan 500. Here's the last few hundred feet.
Michael's thinking, good, I've got him boxed in. But no, instead, Montoya picks up the draft behind Marquez and pulls a car length in front of Michael.
Once again, an unbelievable finish to the Michigan 500. We promised you some driving, and there has been today. But Montoya has proven to be the best among all the drivers at the Michigan 500. We'll be back. Juan Montoya battling with Michael Andretti on the final lap. Montoya times the cross of the line perfectly. It is the 4th closest finish in kart history at 4/100ths of a second. Montoya, Toyota, and Target Chip Ganassi. They're all winners. Gary?
By 4/100ths of a second, Juan. There's something about these 500-mile races, but tell me about the last 10 or 15 laps in that battle with Michael Andretti. What was it like from your seat?
It was really good. You know, at the beginning of the race, I said, okay, you know, play with Michael. He's very clean. It's very good to race against Michael, but he's very clean. And you can just run side by side. And when, you know, I started going by the field and said, oh, this is going to be good. Just going to go away. It's only when I passed Michael, he just passed me back, and he passed me back, and he passed me back. And it was, everything was about timing who was going to cross the line first. So I tried to play it a bit different into one. I thought it was going to work. It's going to be very close. Because if I pass him really late into the corner, he was going to get into my turbulence. And I thought it was going to work. And suddenly we come out of the last corner side by side, and there's this guy in front of us, and I'm like, I'm not going to lift. If I would have had to hit the guy, I would have hit it.
Now tell me about how tough it was to get the car set up because you had radio communication problems with Chip and the crew.
Oh, the car was really good from the beginning of the race. I think all my guys, you know, Bill, Chuck, Eric, all of them did a fantastic job in putting, you know, give me a great car, and all my mechanics did a fantastic job as well.
Just a real quick note. We look down here in the side pod. You can see it looks like you got hit by debris on the roll bar. Did that come? Was that from one of those earlier incidents?
Yeah. When Christian pushed back into the wall, all the car just bounced against me, and like, ooh, I moved up and something hit me in the helmet on there.
Well, at least he's all right. And he says a moment ago, now we got to win one next week for their sponsor in Chicago. Here comes the beautiful Toyota trophy for the Michigan 500, Paul, and look at the grin on this young kid. He's done it again at 500 miles.
Well, he should be smiling. He is the first driver since Rick Mears in 1991 to win at Indy and at Michigan in the same year. Castroneves led the most laps. Paul Tracy got the point for the pole. We'll be back.
The Michigan 500 on ABC Sports, brought to you by FedEx, proud sponsor of the FedEx Championship Series, and Ford F-Series. The best-selling trucks are built Ford tough.
Back at Michigan Speedway, where Michael Andretti, you came oh so close to that victory. Did the slower car of Tarso Marquez make a difference?
Well, he could have either helped me win or helped Juan, and he helped Juan. You know, I started to catch his draft coming off the corner, and then he decided to go high instead of low. He started to go low. I thought, yeah, and then he went high, and then he just allowed Juan to get a suction up behind him, and that was the difference. You know, it was a shame because we had a perfect race. We did everything we wanted to do, laid back, held back, and saved fuel and the whole bit, and had what we needed to fight in the end, and then we lost it there. We had great pit stops. The whole Kmart Texaco team did great pit stops, and then the Ford engine was perfect as well the whole race. So, you know, it just came down in the end. We almost beat it.
And, guys, he also said to some of his crew, he thinks maybe Juan trimmed his car out just a little bit more.
Well, there is some good news for Michael Andretti because he does take a 14-point lead over Roberto Moreno in the points fight here just past the midway point. We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC station. For 250 laps, 500 miles at Michigan, Juan Montoya averaged 177.6 miles an hour to drive to a finish just 0.04 of a second ahead of Michael Andretti, the third closest finish in kart history. Dario Franchitti was sitting back in third place to watch all of that. Here's Gary Gerould.
Dario, as you battled for your own spot, third place and a spot on the podium, did you think that those two guys in front of you, Andretti and Montoya, were going to end up in the wall?
It was pretty close, but no, they knew what they were doing. They were close, but I was actually behind them in Japan when they crashed last year in testing, but they didn't look like they were going to have an accident today. It was very close, though.
And one other quick thought about other close calls in debris. A lot of guys got hit by it. How about you today?
I actually hit it a couple of times because it was right in front of me. You'd come out of a corner and there would be stuff all over the track. So we were lucky. We cut 3 tires, but we came into the pit right at the right time. So it was an interesting day out there. Very exciting racing and a lot of fun.
Well, in the 20th running of the Michigan 500, 151 unofficial lead changes, 53 today, and look at us there in the closest finishes. We'll be right back. Next stop for the Kart FedEx Championship Series a week from today. The Target Grand Prix of Chicago will have coverage right here on ABC Sports. Let's go down to Gary Gerould.
With Helio Castroneves, that last stop, you got the fuel, you got the tires. Are you disappointed you weren't able to get up and challenge the leaders?
Yeah, I was. Unfortunately, when I have like 3 guys on the front, one of them was taking my line, and I was very upset because I couldn't get closer because of the understeer, the amount of the understeer. It was unfortunately, but I have to take the 5th place.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Helio Castroneves finishes in 5th place. Parker Johnstone, you haven't sat down all day.
What a tremendous run. Great battle with Montoya, Andretti, and the rest. Toyota's first 500-mile run. Dario Franchitti goes from a Formula One car to the high banks of Michigan in just 1 week.
So congratulations to Juan Montoya and Target Chip Ganassi as our Toyota Spotlight takes you back throughout the run here at the Michigan 500 today. Paul Page for Parker Johnstone, Gary Gerould, and Jan Vikas. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week at the Target Grand Prix of Chicago. ABC Sports is online at abcsports.com.